Meanwhile, on Saturday night.
Greg! Dude, you'll never fucking believe it, man. We're fucking winning, dude. Mayor Durkin, she just announced a 30-day ban on using tear gas for SPD.
We did
it! All right, man. I'm just going to go ahead and open up the old laptop and check out the live stream, see how things are going down on the hill.
Cue Wilhelm scream.
Yeah. See, if we do it like that, we don't gotta pay the copyright that we don't have. Back to the Seattle Sucks podcast. Now sucking more than ever. Greg is continuing to hole up in my goddamn house, and he won't leave.
Fam, it's a podcast about hating the city we're fucking taking back.
Please take it back so Greg will leave. So Greg is getting very comfortable around here to the point that on Saturday, right, he decided to just take a little hike around the north side just to get his bearings and his new sort of living situation.
Hey, I lived in North Seattle for many, many, many years. That is my hood. I knew those streets well. Yeah, we marched down from Magnuson. A lot of people, big ass crowd. From Magnuson down to U Village. It was all very peaceful. Interesting, for the first time in days, I did not see a cop anywhere in sight. I drove around for like 20 minutes looking for parking. Not a cop anywhere.
Weird.
The whole march all the way down. No cops. Utterly peaceful. We blocked traffic. The amazing, it was very well organized. They had the whole bike squad holding traffic everywhere. It was very well done. Beautiful time. Walked into a complete ghost town U Village. Just nothing but the tumbleweeds.
They didn't even create a protective quarantine around Din Tai Fung.
No. It was empty. And then, everyone took a knee for, nearly
George
9 minutes of silence for George Floyd. And when we rose our heads, the organizers informed us, hey, by the way, everybody, the National Guard has surrounded U Village. So we're all going to march out peacefully. So basically, now I actually never saw the National Guard.
Normal stuff for a normal city.
I think surrounded was probably not exactly accurate. They were probably just I'm guessing actually 12 of them rolled up on 45th and were like, hey, you guys should go now. And which fair enough, we marched back. No reason to stand around and occupy U Village. I mean, what more soul sucking hell would you want to hold down a movement in? But I left by the northeast corner and never saw any of them. And marched all the way back. Not a cop in sight. Totally peaceful.
Weird that they didn't want to deploy tear gas in Laurelhurst.
Yeah, weird. So it seems like there is a limited amount of control that the mayor, the city, SPD command has over SPD, which is they can tell them where to deploy to in the day. Mm-hmm. Once they're there, they're completely out of control because cops, as we can understand, basically feel themselves to be the highest authority on the scene at any scene they happen to be in. So, but what happened is what you've talked about before, Brian, in previous American uprisings in '67, where military units come in and the strategy is just tell the cops, guys, we've got this area. Why don't you just go somewhere else? And then all that is calm and fine.
It's one of those things that for those who study the criminal justice system and policing, everybody's well aware that the police the stance of the police, the actions of the police are actually what cause riots. The riots are more accurately called police riots. And that, in 67 in Detroit, as well as in Newark, when the military was deployed, they basically, the reason why the military was successful was they didn't load their weapons, so they didn't shoot anybody, and they just stood on corners with the strict orders not to do anything. Just stand there, look authoritative. And miraculously, that calmed everything down. Whereas
because they're not
psychopaths.
They're not necessarily
at least.
100% psychopaths,
Yeah.
and because they have some level of discipline and can follow orders, they're actually, if you want to actually maintain a order in a police state using a military force, boy, if that's your goal, the cops are not the tool. The thing is, that's not why the cops exist. The cops exist to terrorize populations in a police state, so that they are very adept.
Yeah. So I mean, it was an interesting contrast, we'll say, with what was happening on the Hill on that same night, which we can get into later. But what were the demands that were being made?
Well, what is happening right now? How to put this? Like, I think at this moment in America, radical black activists may just save us all. That's what I'm feeling right now. It's not white socialist bro podcasts or the DSA. It's
all you other podcasts.
it's like well organized, experienced groups of activists of color. I think in a lot of cities, this is also engrossing, and there's so much going on, and being physically present at a lot of these things means, like, obviously I'm concentrating mostly on Seattle, but certainly in this town, they're very early, I think, compared to nationally, from what I can tell, a group of, and this would have been Wednesday, last Wednesday. This is Monday night, by the way. Last Wednesday, at the very well-organized march from Cal Anderson to City Hall, the occupation of the steps there, where Nikita Oliver, one of these key organizers, demanded to talk to the mayor, came out with Jenny on the steps and just clowned on Mayor Jenny, just made an absolute ass of Mayor Jenny, who was offered the demands of this movement as put forward by these groups of radical organizers, and they are defund the police. The number in the details that's being thrown out is 50%. Reinvest in community, and there's a lot more to that in the details, and immediately release anyone arrested in relation to the protests. You may be saying to yourself, well, gosh, guys, we've listened to the podcast. We know that, defunding the police just can't be enough for you, because that here at Seattle Sucks, we support a Soviet-style denazification of American police. Okay, that's been our stance for a very long time.
Not 100% sure the people of Seattle are quite ready for our reign yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I think that's okay. I think there's a number of ways to look at this. Like, I think a lot of the even the activists who put forward these demands, I think abolition is very much on their mind, from what I can tell. And so on the first hand, I think my instinct is, again, these people in this city and in cities across America are the ones doing this. This moment is happening and is continuing to go on, and these demands are getting real traction here and elsewhere because these organized radical activists have seized on a spontaneous moment effectively in a way that no one has in fucking decades.
Well, and I think too, some of the people who noticeably we don't seem to ever run into out at any of these demonstrations, but you certainly see on Twitter every once in a while that complain about like the defunding demands or whatever. The thing to understand is that for most American, or for pretty much any American city, and certainly for any police department, defunding them 50%, taking away 50% of their budget, you might as well be saying police abolition.
Yeah.
Like, this is essentially
Exactly.
it's a demand that 6 months ago, or 2 months ago, would have been considered
insane, absolutely beyond the pale.
Yeah,
which
ludicrous.
is
like, imagine trying to go into City
an
Hall.
apt reference, actually.
I don't even think that you would be able to get like Sawant to fucking agree with you on that. Like,
I don't know. She's been for defunding.
But I think if you walked over like, oh, hey, who wants to
defunding
sign
and
on to
reinvesting.
my defund SPD, take 50% of their budget away, you'd be laughed out the butt.
I think except by someone.
Yeah. But I think the thing is that like understanding what the purpose of these demands are, in that knowing that you're going to get just massive resistance from the political structure, from the police against it, but you're telling a story with your demands, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because okay, well, in the first place, actually, I think my first response to it is, again, this is working. This movement is happening. It's being driven by these people who put out those demands, and on that basis alone, I'm ready to follow those people.
Sure.
I mean, anywhere. If that is what the radical activists in this town came up with, and whether to whatever degree that's in coordination with people across the country, I am ready to follow them basically anywhere, because it is being shown to America, A, that the police have got to go, and B, that direct action works. And so, I mean, that's the first. So right there, I'm basically all on board. But yeah, as you're
direct action
saying,
has shifted the window, right? Like, of what's
Absolutely.
possible. The horizon has expanded enormously from
yeah.
where we were a month ago.
absolutely, beyond anything imaginable. But yeah, that's the thing, is like, these demands do seem to be incredibly well thought out, because at once, the scale, when you're talking about like political demands, when you're talking about, you're really talking about power. You're really talking about achieving the power to exercise them. Okay, or forcing the hand of power to do that. And honestly, the scale of these things, of like abolishing the police or defunding them by 50%, like literally actually doing that, are both so astronomically large that they are sort of infinitely and equally in reach. Because the question is, can you build the necessary power? And it's such a big reach that it sort of doesn't matter that one sounds a little less like the other. And the other thing is, like you're saying, you're telling a story, because actually the defund and reinvest narrative, reinvesting in communities, answers all the questions basically people ask about abolition. What the fuck do you mean by abolition? And you get into the discussion, and this like geniusly preempts that and says, what we're going to do is invest in all these things in community that we need, including in shit that we're asking in emergency housing, in housing period, in all kinds of other community programs, in education, stuff within communities of color, controlled by communities of color, and in replacing, actually having services that respond to things that we don't want the police responding to, taking shit off their plate. And this is very well thought out. This is essentially an abolitionist argument.
Sure.
The fact that it's by 50% sort of is, again, they're both such enormously heavy lifts that politically it doesn't really matter. But there's another reason that it doesn't matter, because guess what's going to happen if somehow you built the power, if you whatever, if a lot of people are talking about calling for Durkin's resignation, I almost have a little sympathy with the point of view that she uttered the other day, that that's like playing politics, because ultimately it is. If it's useful, if that's what needs to happen to get these reforms passed, they should do that immediately. But like, in and of itself, the point, like, I'd love to see Jenny go, but it's like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if the incoming power structure is just going to uphold the status quo. It's important if it is a move toward actually passing some of this, incredibly needed, meeting these huge demands.
When I think the thing, right, has shown in a lot of ways, what we've seen is that in making a huge demand, you're going to encounter resistance, right, from the state. And in that resistance, you're going to teach people who are fighting for your demand, right, that they have to go further.
Yes.
And that's the thing, right? That's why you don't just whine and say it's not the utopian movement I've built in my brain, therefore I'm not going to participate.
Yes.
You actually go in and do it because, as much as all of us sitting at home are super geniuses who know everything, we must assume that maybe there's some other people who aren't super geniuses like us. And, in the process of struggle, we might learn some things. And in secret, we'll learn things too.
Yeah. And listen, this is not anyone out there in America, this was not us, but like anyone out there in America who was, your proverbial class reductionist,
Sure.
leftist or whatever, really looks like an asshole right now. They already did, really, but you got to be embarrassed, right? Because what this is showing is my God, what a perfect political window, what a perfect storm. A demand on the state to stop murdering black people, that resistance to which, or the advocacy for, is going to be asked by the state to be quelled by exactly the forces that are meeting out that violence, who don't like to be talked back to. And it's this perfect reinforcing cycle where we've seen, you say cops don't do that, they get pissed off, and they prove to the entire country over and over again that they need to be crushed. And it's waking people up, my God, you wouldn't think it would ever touch.
Well, and the thing is that, in Minneapolis, right, when people first took to the streets, it was anger over a lot of, over years and years and decades and, centuries of abuse from the police and people in the city, right? But, people in the street were saying, how come they haven't arrested George Floyd's killer, right? How come they haven't arrested the cops that stood by and helped him kill him, right? And then the police arrested him. And you know what happened? People didn't leave the fucking streets, did they? Right?
No.
Then they made more demands, right? Because it turns out once you give people political power, the problem with the working class in America is it has no political power, right? It hasn't felt it in a long time. It hasn't felt itself in a long time, right?
It doesn't know how to exercise any power. Yeah.
And all of a sudden it gets in the street and it starts to flex it a little bit and a demand gets met. It's not like they're just going to go home. It's not like we only have one complaint, people... they might have been holding, signs or, telling reporters or whatever, how come they haven't arrested these officers. But they had more complaints than that, right? Which is why the Minnesota, sort of liberal establishment started to panic when they decided, okay, we're going to arrest this officer. And then nothing changed, right? And now they're talking about completely disbanding the police force, right? So, this idea that... the demand that you start with has to be the perfect demand is crazy, right?
Yeah.
All it has to be is one that exposes the system for what it is, right? And, the 50% defunding demand, again, for police departments, might as well be fucking abolishing them. And, you're exposing, the police as this sort of vital circuit of capital that they're going to defend against their population, to a rather embarrassing degree. And, as far as the 21 class first, whatever socialists that exist in America that all are, Michael Tracy essentially, or Michael Tracy adjacent. It must be fucking embarrassing for them because how do you explain this idea that, it's not anti-capitalist to oppose the police? It's not anti-capitalist to oppose racism in America, a system literally created to grease the wheels of our foundational labor structure in this country. Fucking clown shoes, all of them.
Yeah.
Fucking jokes. Which is why they're in the dustbin. Which is not. I never want to hear Michael Tracy on this show again. Why are we talking about these people? They're like a certain former reporter, Jesus Christ, former columnist for the fucking Stranger that nobody can remember the name of, who's gone into the dustbin of his.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, right. Just totally swept aside by the currents of the moment. Somebody that can only exist when there's total stagnation and all we have is dirty water to drink, right?
Yeah.
And now just who even remembers?
Well, look, there's other reasons. Like you said, there are. The other way to look at it, there are other reasons to start with demands that are not your utopian end goal. Okay, because you need what has happened here is the immediate demands were met very quickly with just a few days of people being in the streets, right? Mm-hmm. And arresting the cop and then the other cops. That showed people their power, right? So it's important. That's huge. Actually getting timely demands met, showing a continual trajectory in the winning direction is important to sustain this movement. So we have to keep doing. We have to keep getting these wins, small and medium, and hopefully soon large.
Yeah.
But that to keep the movement going. But because we're dealing with this sort of perfect cycle of actually directly confronting the armed thugs of the state. This is an extremely dangerous time, and it's a dangerous thing to be involved in. It's a dangerous thing to be around because they are absolutely psychotic, murderous, and very territorial and vindictive. And
they certainly don't have a minor investment in their continued existence.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They see themselves being threatened, and we're already seeing them lashing out at protesters. We'll get into that a little more, but I want us to imagine no gains really come out of this, no substantive gains. Now, all we've gotten so far, as I'm referring to like the whole national movement here, are some important but small signals that we are winning, that the people are winning against the cops and the power structure. That's important to keep this going. If we don't end this, if this doesn't resolve with substantial gains being made against the cops for the people, and then the narrative will be, or the mood will be, that what that will signal is that this was ultimately impotent, that this was a failure, and that does not mean going back to the status quo, because the right is in power in this country, and the forces we're confronting literally are the murderous pigs themselves. So if you go back, if this is shown to be impotent and it eventually dissipates without a strong hammer coming down on the cops, even if you get the result of defunding SPD by 50%, there will be voices calling to double their budget. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you are successful at defunding them by 50%, those voices will be loonies in the wilderness, okay? With a fringe position that no one gives a shit about. But if this comes down without any significant near-term gains against the cops, then their budget will be increased, their powers will be increased, and they will be emboldened to reach out and fucking murder people.
Oh yeah, if you think the SPD operates with little to no oversight now, wait till you see what happens if shit falls apart and nothing comes of this, as far as decreasing SPD's budget or anything. At this point, honestly, decreasing SPD's budget by 50%, which would mean taking away a lot of their weapons. Also, supporting things like, SWAT had the thing as a ban on, various crowd control weapons, including chemical weapons. But also part of that ban was them not even being able to own them. So not just they can't use them, they actually just can't have them in any way.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you need now, and that's not just a political goal, that is a practical goal.
It's a practical
goal. Because if they come out of this unscathed, they're fucking going to be coming for all. They've already made, retaliatory arrests of the guy who filmed, the SPD member pepper spraying that young girl, who's now in jail being denied bail. And if you think that shit isn't a serious deal, you're saying that apparently just today, literally today, after 6 years in jail, the guy who filmed the Eric Gardner, murder in New York, finally got out of jail. But they're entirely
bullshit, retaliatory nonsense, locked up for 6 years for daring to cause the police any fucking trouble. And so if a hammer doesn't fucking come down on their face, they are going to reach out with their full power that they have now and more, and they are just going to fucking murder people.
Yeah.
They're going to track down people involved in this protest. You've already been out there. Your face is already on camera. Whatever precautions you're taking,
they're not going to save you.
They will come after people in a reign of terror across this country. So at this point, if we stop now, it is a death sentence, at least for a lot of activists who are very identifiable and forward in this movement. And just whatever low-hanging fruit they can get their hands on and throw in jail on some bullshit, they will do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's worth mentioning, too, that, after the 2014 uprising in Ferguson, there's been this mysterious trend of, I think now, maybe 10 or 12 different, activist leaders in Ferguson have just magically shown up dead in gangland incidents, according to the police, where they're in a car with a bullet in their head and the car's been lit on fire. The kind of thing you would do if you're, I don't know, assassinating somebody. So
for political reasons, and you knew how crime scenes were investigated, and you belonged to a police force that had an uprising come up against it, and at the end of it, they had to make the concession of not wearing camo anymore.
Yeah. So and that's what came out of that, right? And I think that's the thing that you have to remember is that while we make jokes about the police, we call them pigs or whatever, they're not just a cartoon. Like, they actually are an incredibly violent, vindictive, basically psychopathic fucking
death
organization.
Squad.
Yeah. And every death squad in every country has been made up of the police, all right? That's an important thing to fucking remember, all right?
Yes.
Death squads are made up of cops, and there's a fucking reason for that, all right? It is a self-selecting group.
Yes. And that is what will happen if there is no significant reform, if they are not on the back foot. Okay? Now, dark turn. Another reason, as an abolitionist, I'm all for this defund the police shit, is you have seen how they have reacted to just people, expressing their displeasure. Okay? They've gassed Capitol Hill over and over again. They're vindictively arresting people. They're beating protesters. They're absolutely out of control. And this is the case across the country. Here's the thing. On the day any vote actually takes place in City Hall to literally cut 50% out of the fucking budget and whatever other specifics would be in that bill, all of SPD is going to be at City Hall. They're going to fucking tear gas that building, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They're probably going to literally try and kill council people. They're going to basically try and lynch whoever the mayor is.
Yeah.
They're going to, expect actual tear gas in that building.
Human shield around Sawad, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, seriously.
But and again, if you're saying, Greg and Brian, you guys are crazy. You're sniffing that gasoline again.
Tell us about the first black mayor in New York, Brian.
In 1992. Go ahead and Google 1992 New York NYPD riot. All right, but when Mayor Dinkins in New York, all he asked for, this is all he pushed for, was that he wanted to open an investigation into corruption and abuse from NYPD, right? Something that would eventually be called the Mullen Commission, which is very interesting reading, I will say. But upon announcing that, and I think he had also announced some sympathy for Rodney King, but upon announcing that, 1,000 NYPD officers showed up out of uniform, and according to reporters on the scene, many were extremely drunk, many had their weapons on them, and showed up outside the mayor's office. And basically were shouting that they were going to lynch him. Were shouting, calling him names that we're not going to repeat on this show, but you can certainly imagine, demanding that he come out so that they can murder him. Guess what Dinkins didn't do after that? Reform the fucking police in any way. All right? Now, by the way, NYPD, who just, essentially doxed Mayor de Blasio's fucking daughter, as just a little note to him of like, hey, we know where your daughter lives, all the way down to her apartment number and everything, just in case. De Blasio got his political start as an aide to Mayor Dinkins. He was fucking there when that shit happened, which is why he's a giant fucking rollover when it comes for the cops, because they've already trained his ass, all right? And they just remind him every once in a while that they can reach out and touch him anytime. And so if you think that this shit isn't real, this shit can't happen, it's already happened. It's very real. Not in the 60s, not anything like that. In the recent fucking past.
In your lifetime.
Yeah. There are NYPD officers still on the force who were at that fucking riot. All right?
Yeah.
A lot of them.
And you've seen, they won't even fucking uncover their badge numbers. Why?
Yeah.
Because someone asked them to.
Was it 52 cops didn't quit, but resigned their dumb SWAT whatever fucking team membership or whatever in Buffalo because they were told they couldn't shove over a 70-year-old man and cause him to bleed from his ears, all right?
Yeah.
Like, these people are fucking psychos.
So this is yet again another reason why, like, the defund demand, again, it's such an enormous affront. It's such a huge blow against SPD that either the political will is gathered and it is successful in some way, or it is tried, and the cops, as attempts to curtail police power gain strength, police abuses will only gain further strength. They continually show they're completely out of control. I am 100% confident there will be an insane fucking riot at City Hall if they actually try to pass a bill like this. And if that's the case, either that will cement that bill at the very least and give the council the city the political capital for the next 20 years to actually see it through, or it will make the next round the next week just abolish all of the police, and then when more SPD officers show up, and that time with their guns, and maybe the National Guard will have to start shooting at them. I don't know. Yeah. Either way, whatever level of success here, like it's all going in the right fucking direction.
Yeah. All the pressure you're putting in SPD now is what's causing them to show their ass, and that's what's causing people to. It's radicalizing people in the streets. It's radicalizing people in their homes who are getting tear gassed in their fucking homes, and that's why all of a sudden city council members are starting to suggest that they might be interested in defunding the police, something they wouldn't touch. Remember, they just voted, all of them except I believe Sawant was the lone vote against a police union contract that completely took the extremely surface level reforms that have been made.
This is the last
and
council.
Put them directly in the fucking trash.
There's only 3 of those people left.
But the point is that
yes.
Here, Mosqueda voted for that.
Yeah.
And now she's saying defund by 50%. That's a fucking enormous shift, right? And that has nothing to do with Mosqueda all of a sudden getting smart. It has to do with people in the street forcing her, right? Now, the thing is that we talk about SPD showing their ass, right? Fucking Durkin went out and covered for them. And, after finding out they had apparently run out of tear gas, made this big show of saying we're going to have a 30-day tear gas ban, which is this whole thing of like, hey, SPD, we're going to help you out of this jam. I'm going to cover for you on why you're not going to attack people. And all you have to do is chill out for a while. They couldn't make it 24 hours. Like, they're incapable of self-control. They're incapable of making the smart decision.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's where Best is in all this, the chief. Is she siding with her force in defiance of Durkin, or is she trying to rein them in and is incompetent at that? Like, whatever is happening here, they're out of fucking control.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone is learning this.
Yeah.
Everyone in Seattle and everyone in fucking America.
Yeah. I mean, they had, not that the police have any fond feelings for Sawant or anything like that, but when last night when she was on the, barricade or whatever, I mean, they literally just pepper sprayed her and threw flashbangs at her, which is, let's just say, an interesting choice for a police department to do with a sitting city council member, if they have any intention of any thought of self-preservation or anything, at least, right? Like, I mean, there's always been this idea that the police can abuse anybody they want so long as they're politically powerless, right? Yeah. But the buck stops there when that's why they're not throwing tear gas in Laurelhurst, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was, an interesting misstep from SPD of like, what are you trying to get here other than fucking defund it?
Well, they see the world in an interesting way. I mean, what this shows us is that though they may not be completely conscious of it or understand it, they do instinctually know that their role is political.
Yeah.
And that they are now, and right now they are acting out of their sheer violent political will. And they understand that Sawant is their enemy, their political enemy, their cultural enemy, and to this, they've escalated to a point where the rules are gone. They're in a war against the city. Yeah. This is what they've been stoking themselves up for. All police in America and in this city, certainly since the consent decree, that they're in this. These are they're all these suburban shithead cops who are like, we work in this liberal hellhole where crime is rampant and we're abused by the city and we're going alone to protect these people who don't even appreciate us, and that's their narrative, and they sort of instinctually understand that that's political, and they're showing that by gassing their enemy on the council.
And I mean, as much as we've made light on this show in the past of dumbasses like Duff McKagan or that awful Seattle's Dying documentary who portray Seattle as this just center of mass poverty, like some sort of Brazil-esque favela of just pure crime and violence and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, we laugh about like how fucking, you know, out of touch you have to be to think that's what Seattle's like. The police believe that, though. Like, they believe that, and they think that it's a plan by a Jewish syndicate to, you know, make it that way in order to, you know, do whatever, right? End America or whatever dumb thing they believe, right? And so that's the lens they view it through. So what seems like an obvious choice on our part of like, you know, if you didn't want to be defunded, maybe you should chill out for a little bit, is not something that they like see in any way. Now, that being said, talking about different worlds, I mean, we just have to talk for a second about this fucking candle picture. Like Seattle again, just
so good,
just fucking ruling. It's the Seattleification of America, right? We're all over the national airwaves. When SPD decided to excuse the fact that they couldn't go 24 hours without gassing their own people, they did the usual police evidence photo where they display, you know, they write up a little list of all the horrifying things they found, display photos of it. And they
like usually it's like on a table somewhere and it's laid out like Wes Anderson
This one
style,
was one. I don't think Bomb Squad had shown up yet, so it's still just on the street. But they talk about how they found
defuse the candle.
But they found a improvised, you know, according to their Twitter, they found an improvised explosive device. Now, by Sunday, this had changed, and when the mayor and the police chief both referenced it, they referred to it as an incendiary explosive device that was very clearly a candle, all the way to the point of having a label that said candle on it. I mean,
but that photo was played with that on NBC Nightly News.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's this thing, too, of, like, part of it is, I mean, as we joke all the time, I mean, when you talk about cops, you're talking about, like, the dumbest human beings that have ever walked on the earth. But the other part of it, too, is these are people who've, like, literally lied every day of their fucking lives, and people have just, like, swallowed it whole, right? Because the media, you know, they just run cover for the police. The politicians run cover for the police. The criminal justice system exists to put poor people in jail, so, like, whatever the police say goes, right? So they just lie the most brazen fucking lies because they've never been told. It's like, have you ever like been around like a 5-year-old when they learn about the concept of lying? Like, and they just tell you this shit that's like completely fucking stupid, and you just want to slap them. That's the police all the time, right? Like, and I mean, it was just so funny to see it on the national news. Now, I will say that the candle, the improvised explosive candle, was very funny, but it wasn't the funniest one that happened that day, which was Austin PD from my home state came in and basically said, improvised candle, fuck that, check this out. And on their official Twitter, they posted, the evidence photo. They had a table in the precinct with all these cards on it.
This is the Wes Anderson style one.
Yeah, with all the cards on it. And they're like, oh, we'd just like to thank the community for all the, for this outpouring of support that they've given us. And then they did a close-up, so they had a big picture where you could see just the table covered. And then
what, in letters?
Yeah, in letters. And then a close, just guys bringing in sacks. Like, these are all letters for Santa Claus.
Yeah, Miracle on 34th Street, like the post office just streaming in.
And the funny part was, had they any brains, they would have kept it as a wide shot. But they insisted, no, we have to show the quality. So they did a close-up shot, too.
Someone was proud of their work.
Yeah. And all the envelopes, A, are all the same size. That very normal thing that happens when you buy, like, gift cards or whatever. But B, almost as they bought them in bulk. But B, have a script-written thank you on them. No address or stamp or anything. The thing's required to mail a letter, right? But just in script, like handwritten script, thank you on it. And it matches. One, they all say the same thing, and it all matches perfectly. As if one person...
One rube.
wrote all of it. So...
With good handwriting.
Before we get into the story just getting funnier, I do want to point out it is hilarious that, because I mean this is a ploy, right? But the funny part was, not one of them was like, well, maybe instead of having one person write them all, we should get, like, I don't know, our friends and family to, like, write them so that way they at least look different. But no, not even that like went through their heads. So hilariously, a reporter from Gizmodo, after seeing this, called up Austin PD and got one of their spokespeople on and was like, hey, I just had some questions about those thank you cards. They're like, yeah. He's like, oh, who wrote them? And the spokesperson of Austin PD responded, oh, a kindergarten class had written them for us and gave them to us. To which the person from Gizmodo said, schools aren't in session right now, right? Like, they're all closed and have been for a while. To which the police, being just complete fucking geniuses, said, "Oh, well, it wasn't a kindergarten class, but it was definitely kindergarten age people." So, kindergartners with very nice script, I must say, much better handwriting than I have. You just wouldn't know these kindergartners. They're from Canada.
Oh my God.
You wouldn't have met them.
The Canadian kindergartner demographic.
Fucking astonishing. But this is the level of intellect we're dealing with in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
But,
an arm to the teeth.
Yeah. That being said, after their comical display of stupidity on Saturday and just like viciousness, honestly, on the Hill, Mayor Durkin announced gonna give an emergency big press conference on Sunday, and Greg knows me. I'm a Durkin head. She calls a press conference, I'm there. I'm all about it. I get on that shit. I mean, that's must-see TV for me. So I sat in and watched it. And I know that most people missed it, because why the fuck would you watch a press conference with Mayor Durkin? But I got to say, this was just fascinating fucking viewing. So it began hilariously with Carmen Best, and we wonder what her whole stance is in this whole thing. She came out there was some speculation that maybe Durkin was going to resign in this press conference. I'll just say that didn't happen. I'll burst that bubble. But Best came in and, really had a very militant stance for it. And basically was not, would refuse to admit that they'd gassed anybody. And then basically just said, our police use appropriate force all the time, and the force is always commiserate with the danger. And then proceeded to highlight the East Precinct on Capitol Hill as a particularly dangerous location in the city, where they were going to continue to use proportional force, right? Which was code for, we're going to continue to gas people on Capitol Hill, which they then did like an hour after this press conference finished. Apparently with Carmen Best on the street when they did that, by the way. So probably directly ordered by her. So interesting. That was the psychotic, ultra-fascist element of it. And then Durkin the Clown showed up, my favorite. And she began by, one, saying this protest is about George Floyd, which she said over and over again. But what I thought was an interesting change was she finally admitted that SPD kills people too, which was something she's never said up to this point at any of these conferences,
Huge.
Right? Any of these pressers, right? So again, this is people on the ground forcing her. She doesn't want to say this shit. Now, it was interesting. She brought up Charlene Lyle. She brought up Che Taylor. I believe she also brought up John T. Williams. Interestingly, she did not bring up the guy they killed, Sean Furr, the guy they killed like 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Interesting that slipped her mind. But she then went on to basically refuse to admit that, again, that they gassed anybody, and gave the same speech. And she had this really interesting kind of inflection where she talked about how the leaders of the black community she had talked to were telling her that they're actually afraid of the protests, and that the protests should go away for the sake of the black community, which I thought was charming.
Incredible.
But she really pointed out the protests at East Precinct, and really, I thought, tried to separate it from everything else that's going on. Mm-hmm. So one said that the people at the protest at East Precinct weren't from the neighborhood, and then tried to imply that people in the neighborhood, were mad at them or whatever, didn't like them being there. But then also implied...
Oh, I'm sure the City Hall has gotten some calls about being unhappy with some of the events that have gone down. Yeah, I'll buy that. Well, such as being gassed in their own homes.
Well, and then she then went on to imply again that she talked to leaders of Black Lives Matter, and they had also said that not only did they not approve of the protests on Capitol Hill, but that they were frightened by it and wouldn't go there, and that they thought it was ruining their message or whatever.
Did she happen to give any names for these leaders?
Oh, no. They were anonymous, which was interesting because,
Anonymous leaders.
Well, so Amari Salisbury, who's been, live streaming everything on the Hill, and is a black gentleman from the Central District, Durkin mentioned him by name, I think 2 or 3 times in this speech. But all of a sudden, when it came to this, anonymous people. And I guess later on, not during the presser, because I don't think she even got to ask the question or even got to ask a question, but Erica Barnett, I guess, got to ask her later on about this, to which point Jenny just literally gave her the, yeah, they prefer to be anonymous. And also, you wouldn't know them. They go to a different high school. They're from Canada. They're from Canada. I mean, just astonishing. Fucking astonishing. I mean, just a comical, just blatant line right there. I mean, who fucking believes any of this shit? But interesting.
Oh my god! How dare she?
Yeah.
How dare she?
So the funniest.
That's got to be one of the most cynical acts of her entire mayorship.
God, yeah.
I mean, all of this is despicable, but like standing. I mean, Wow.
When people talk about, when you read like, Racecraft, or you read like New Jim Crow or whatever, right? And you talk about how, politicians, liberal and conservative alike, use like race and racism as like a lever to essentially, pursue, neoliberal ends or, pro-capitalist ends. I mean, Durkin has been doing this, in droves during this whole thing. I mean, from the very beginning, her just completely nonsensical, all the protesters are rich white people, are rich white men, right?
Yeah.
At the very beginning. Something that's like, we can see video of these events, right?
Yeah.
Like, to this, I mean, like, just the most cynical sort of, race play, essentially, a race baiting that I've ever fucking seen. I mean, just astonishing. Now, the funniest part of the press conference, though, really was the question and answer portion. And I gotta say, the absolute funniest thing was, right when they went into question and answers, people wanted to ask Carmen Best, our chief, questions. Now, after Best gave her little spiel, she stepped just off of camera, right? Jenny Durkin, when they wanted to ask her questions, basically said, and keep in mind, this is all over Zoom, right? So, like, nobody's in the room with them. So Durkin says, Chief Best has actually left the building and is in a very important meeting right now. So, she's not here to answer any questions, right? So the reporters just, gullibly believe it, like they believe everything the mayor tells them. And they ask a series of questions. And one of them finally gets to the mourning badge question, right? This absolute bullshit story that people in the press are continuing to just buy from, that there's something called a mourning badge, and that's why officers were covering up their fucking badge numbers.
Just before you even go into this story, like, the question was asked, why are they or very early on, fucking last Sunday, I think, and was, why the fuck are they covering their badge numbers? And she gave this bullshit, I think that it's a traditional mourning badge. And it's like, this is a total deflection that has nothing to do with it. No one gives a shit what they are using to cover their badge numbers. But the press just went with it and like, okay, I guess we'll let you get back to that. Now tell us more about the mourning badges. What reporters should have been saying was, stop talking about mourning badges. We're asking, for example, what is the policy on officers covering their fucking badge number? Is that not against the rules? Go on, please. Anything. But keep continually drawn into this mourning badge bullshit. Which
horseshit. So, and also, it drives me crazy because she's done this, this has come up in every press conference, and that not one reporter hasn't just pulled their hair out and just yelled at her and called her a liar. Like, if this was a press conference where they were physically there, a reporter should have pulled their shoe off and thrown it at her.
Yeah.
Like, she's lying to your face. It couldn't be more fucking obvious. Everybody knows it's a lie. Stop treating it like it's not an obvious lie. But the point being is that, so they asked this question about the mourning badges, and she goes on this big spiel about how, we're going to ban the mourning badges now because this reporter actually, like, did push on it a little bit and was saying, like, I know you said they're not doing the mourning badge thing anymore, but I have, video of officers who've put black tape over their badge numbers. And she's like, well, we're gonna have to look into that. But that's a mourning badge, maybe, and we banned those. Again, so I don't know. We'll look into it.
Nothing to do with mourning badges.
But the funniest part about this entire thing was after she just goes to this absolute drivel non-response, because she mistakenly said we've banned them, or because she said we've banned them, Carmen Best comes where she's been standing just slightly out of frame, right? Comes back up to the podium. Jenny immediately backs away from the podium, and Best takes the mic and basically just says, actually, SPD, we've not banned mourning badges, and we're not going to, and then walks right back, just slightly off frame again.
Just enough to, we know she's out of frame.
Yeah, she's out of frame.
But when she had left the building, it was in a meeting.
And so Jenny,
in another building.
Yeah, and Jenny comes up to the mic. It was David Croman fucking was next. And he basically was like, yeah, I'd like to ask Carmen Best a question. And then Ginny goes, she's not in the building right now. It's like, we just saw her. We literally just saw her. What are you talking about?
Amazing.
Get out of your fucking... So, I mean, this is the level of, like, discourse we get from the police and from, you know, the police's, like, political front, which is Jenny Durkin.
Well, look,
which
it tells
is
you
just
Jenny
lying to your face. I mean, just unfucking
absolute
believable.
lying in the face of... Look, Jenny is cop to her core. She believes in the police. She wants to help the police. But
one of the richest people in Seattle, so she needs the police.
They are all they also, including Carmen Best, completely out of her control. She's essentially clearly being held hostage by the cops. I said on Wednesday, I was like, when we were all in front of City Hall and we had Jenny out there surrounded by protesters on a protester mic and the cops like several rows behind her, I said, man, maybe we should offer her shelter, let her disappear into the crowd, and we'll set her up to run, you know, City Hall from some undisclosed location, you know, because like every City Hall in America, however much she may ultimately believe we need a police state that can crush the poors and the blacks, like she's also a fucking hostage.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, and it's intriguing. I mean, you
like
know,
her imprisoner, her prison guard, Karen Best, was literally standing out of frame, monitoring her,
to make sure
and
she said the right
stepped
thing.
in to correct, and she stepped out of the way to let her come in and correct the record.
Yeah.
And then lied for her twice.
Yeah,
I mean, lying for her all day. But.
Yeah, but I lied for her the most comically stupid, childish way, which is the funny part of it. I mean, like, these people don't respect you. Listeners, these people don't respect you. They think you're very stupid. Like, that you would not put that together. And, you know, to be fair, maybe we are very stupid because no reporter then was like, I know she's still there. Like, I just saw her. I'm not a baby. It's like I don't have object permanence. Like,
yeah, but, in this moment, you think they fucking would, right? Because at this point, this shit's...
The reporters in this city are cowards. Like, that's what this is all highlight. Cowards and basically useless.
Well, the other thing is, I think
unless they want to come on the show, in which case they're heroes.
Yes. I mean, there is a different dynamic because she's protected through this. They control the fucking Zoom meeting. Right? They can just, like... easily shut someone up and go, oh, technical difficulties, whatever. Not like they're in the room, you know, I don't know. So
when there's not really an ability
still
to do
worth it to fucking ask the question and never be invited back because that's the moment we're in. So
yeah. I mean, do you think that you know, reporter or whatever threw his shoe at fucking George W. Bush gave a shit that like
he's in the Iraqi Congress?
Was he in the Congress? Yeah. But either way, do you think he was cared that he wasn't going to be invited back to hang out with George W. Bush? No, he's like the moment, just like fuck this fucking guy.
He was like, fuck it, I'm a legend.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where people need to be right now. But anyways, so
that guy rules.
I know, it's so fucking good. Somebody like asked him one time, he said the only thing he was mad about was it didn't connect, which is the funniest thing on the planet. So you know, just kind of closing out this just, I mean, absurd meeting. You know, a reporter, again, like to their credit, like asked a more probing question about the gassing. And when Jenny denied that the police had gassed people, she's like, well, that's weird because we have photos of protesters holding, you know, gas grenades of, you know, this gas, right? To which Jenny just responded, oh, well, the organizers, the march organizers and stuff, they told me that they only wanted to ban tear gas, and that's pepper gas. So there you go.
Oh, the organizers.
The organizers.
Oh.
They asked for the tear gas ban, and and as she phrased it, they were only concerned about tear gas. Other gas is okay. So if they just want to like go in that old World War I stockpile and launch mustard gas in the middle of fucking Capitol Hill, I guess that's okay.
Yes. Blistering agents are a-okay. All right, some chlorine gas.
I mean, again,
drown in your own lungs, claw your own asshole out. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and to be fair, this reporter was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Which is the right
next question would be. I mean, first of all, it is ridiculous. Tear gas is a colloquialism.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think it was
a nickname,
a short for gassing people.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I think
well, the next logical question would have been, are you saying no one was brought to tears by the gas last night? Because I think there's pretty good evidence that they were.
Yeah, and I mean, and there were some reports that
I mean, how stupid does she look? I mean, from every level. Lying about it now, but doing it in the first place, and then having to go back and say, yeah, well, really what I was saying was meaningless because we have multiple kinds of gas, so I was just fucking with you anyway.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, because that's slightly better than SPD's completely out of my control and anyone's control. I mean, just what a fucking clown.
And by the way, again, within an hour or two of this press conference ending, Carmen Best was on the ground at East Precinct ordering gas attacks.
Oh, I don't
Capitol
think she
Hill.
liked how that press conference went. I think she went and wanted to get some of her anger out at Mayor Jenny and the protesters. Yeah.
So finally, I mean, the last thing about this thing, which I think came immediately after the gas question, friend of the show, one of our original patrons, Jason Rance, got a question, and it was so fucking funny because they kick it to Rance, and just what a fucking weasel. But he begins, he's one of those guys that doesn't ask questions. He has like the quanswers, right?
Oh,
like it's just,
God.
A statement that's in the form of a question because he just ends it like on a high note. But basically he was just like, if he's like, you tell me this, Mayor, if the police can't use chemical weapons against the population.
Well, clearly they can, so what are you talking about?
Yeah, I know, no shit, right? But if they can't use chemical weapons against the population, what are they supposed to do? Which he then followed with a complaint that I don't even think ever had a question to it, where he just was mad that protesters were using swears around the police. So protesters out there, Jason's very mad that you guys are using swears. Loser. Now, to highlight what a fucking loser he is, Dirk and I think was literally just like, okay, and just went to the next question. Like even our idiot mayor was like, who the fuck is this guy? And just moved on, which was so fucking funny.
Oh my God, that rules.
Guys, I'm just saying, watch these press conferences. They are getting just increasingly
Dada-esque?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, you couldn't write like a parody. I mean, that whole thing with Carmen Best coming
Dude,
from
that
out of
is
frame back into frame.
like
It's a Danny McBride thing.
It's an Armando Iannucci thing.
Yeah.
Dude,
like just astonishing. Like,
oh my God.
Fucking unbelievable. That I love. And again, I mean, it shows how stupid SPD is too, because like the mayor's trying to do something for you here, right? The mayor's trying to cover
that's
for
the
you
story
and just
all
blowing
around.
it up.
Look,
like,
I mean, that's the
so
story of our
funny.
entire fucking country's death spiral here. All these systems have been, the systems of neoliberalism have been so honed and so perfected through generations that none of those components have any other scripts, have any other skills, know how to do anything else, and are completely inflexible. This is, the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
All Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden know how to do is say, no, you can't have anything, because that's been the script. And that's what they were picked to do, trained to do, what they self-selected for. That's all they know. Mm-hmm. Total inflexibility. That's Jenny. She's a fucking cop. And that's SPD. They're like, we crack heads. You're saying we can't crack heads? Fuck you.
Yeah, we crack heads.
Yeah, we crack heads. Like...
I mean,
fucking incredible.
Unbelievable.
So the point is, even when they have an opportunity to maybe do something a little fucking smarter and be a little flexible in a way that might actually benefit their fucking power, they're incapable of that.
Yeah. So basically, I think it must have happened. So let's talk a little bit about what happened at East Precinct last night on Sunday night.
Well, yesterday, a lot went down yesterday. I did the Othello March. Got to hear Nikita speak at the Safeway parking lot. That was good. Also very peaceful. Not a fucking cop in sight.
It turns out they're all in one location these days. Weird, Greg. All the police are in one location in the city. They seem to be nowhere else. And there's no problems anywhere except the one location the police are at.
Huh.
Interesting. What a weird coincidence.
Yeah, I've
maybe we could create a vision of the future based off of this weird fact that we're finding.
Yeah,
here.
Seriously. I mean, I didn't see a cop all that day until after marching back to Othello Park. I rolled up to the Hill, and I was hanging out, watching the line get pushed from the crosswalk at 11th and Pine up, slowly up the block. Then I went around the corner. I was hungry, coming off this long march, and I was like, I'm going to go order some chicken at Baka Bak. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right. Seattle Sox has a sponsor.
So I ordered some chicken. I was like, oh, it's going to be 15 minutes. I went back. I went back to the protest. I was like, I'm going to walk back over. I'm just going to stand next to this dumpster, like waiting for my chicken. I've got 15 minutes or so. I'm going to just walk the block back. See what's going on over there. Okay, whatever. I walk back. And apparently, as I am gone, getting my chicken, a right-wing psychopath showed up to murder a bunch of people.
Yeah, and to be fair, to give the appropriate story, Greg was coming out of the chicken place, just holding his chicken, probably smelling it. He was like floating to the smell, like a cartoon,
Pepe Le
like
Pew
hobo
style,
to a
yeah.
pie at a window,
Yeah.
right? You know, probably like singing to himself. And meanwhile, while Greg was enjoying the ecstasy of this,
The sauces are very good.
it was a good. Greg brought me a piece home. It was very good. Much better than the fish place he used to be there. He sold me very soggy fish and chips, and I was not very excited about it. But anyways, so while all this was happening, yeah, this guy drove through a barrier, right? Then drove wildly down the street
Down
while
11th,
accelerating.
Ford Pine.
You know,
Actually, he whipped around the corner.
Yeah.
He was coming westbound on Pike, whipped around the corner onto 11th. People had to jump out of the way. Then they started chasing him.
yeah,
And then he sort of swerves his way down 11th. This is all you can see in all the videos. Probably you already have.
yeah, and he's heading, to the sort of main body of where the crowd was when the police had barricaded everybody onto that, intersection there. Weird. Don't know why this guy would have known where the crowd would be or where the police barricade might be. But luckily, two very heroic individuals showed up, which was what looked like a young man who picked up a piece of the police barricade and threw it in front of the car,
jammed it in front of
jamming
this
the fucking
moving
car.
car.
Yeah, like it just jammed up the fucking car, which, I mean, just incredible foresight and reflexes from that individual.
And-
Also, very scary thing to do.
my
Yeah,
God.
so. And then another individual who reached in the car
Dan Gregory
to stop the guy.
is his
Dan
name.
Gregory, yeah,
Reached in, decked the motherfucker.
yeah,
Uh,
and then took a shot to the shoulder.
yeah. The fucking shithead winged him with
Yeah.
his fucking Glock with mags in it long enough to be taped together.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he had
sticking out of the bottom of his Glock, another taped back upside down to it. So, figure that's like 30 rounds right there.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
guessing.
yeah. I think he had two 16-round mags.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were taped together for quick reloading. Like if you had to shoot a mass of people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
some
just
sort
sitting
of
there on your
some
dri-
sort of
on your
mass
passenger
shooting.
seat.
Yeah,
To
as-
defend yourself after you plowed through a
Yeah.
crowd.
Yeah.
And finally to end your own life.
And to be fair, this is not like speculation that he was probably trying to plow into the crowd. This has actually happened in multiple events now where right-wing fucking psychopath friends of the cops.
Some of them cops.
And some of
Sometimes
them
they have
actual
just been
cops.
cops, yeah.
Cops themselves have been doing it, but also, freaks on the side. One is killed somebody in Oakland, I believe, right? But yeah, I mean, this is happening all over the country. So yeah, this guy plowed through this, and after shooting somebody, he then got out of the car and immediately beelined for the police line.
He sort of danced around his car, waving his gun at people.
Yeah.
People screaming, but honestly, it's such a big crowd, so loud. A lot of people never clocked him as he sort of shimmied his way through the crowd.
Now let me mention that real fast, because there were some people on Twitter who were, again, people who've never been at an event that's more than two people on it because they have no friends and just sit at home all day. But doing this thing of nobody in the crowd when it went running stopped him or whatever. And I gotta say,
First of all, there were lots of people running after that car.
Yeah, no shit.
The guy got fucking decked.
Yeah.
Okay? But lots of people. By the time he's out of the car, the people he's running through have not seen, even though it was 10, 15 feet from them.
Well, that's my point. Is when at Trump's inauguration, when a guy went to the UW and tried to murder somebody, a MAGA fucking shot at the UW tried to murder somebody at Trump's inauguration. I was 20 feet away when that guy shot that guy, and I remember some people came. I didn't hear shit. And I remember some people came running, and some fucking college Republican ran up to me and said, "They're shooting." And I remember laughing at him and told him, "Stop being such a fucking baby." And then minutes later, I looked over and saw that police were trying to arrest a guy who was just bleeding on the ground. Which, by the way, not that this has anything to do with what we're about to reveal about this story, but that MAGA chud, one, was allowed to leave the University of Washington campus after shooting somebody by the police who had completely surrounded the event, right? And then when he showed back up at the UW precinct to turn himself in, not only did they not arrest him or anything like that. They actually worked with him to concoct a fucking alibi for his story, a fake fucking story that basically probably would have completely, led to 0 charges and gotten out of trouble had the whole encounter not been videotaped.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, police directly worked with him to essentially fabricate a story.
What you're saying is they understand their role is political.
Exactly. So, apropos of, nothing, or certainly not related to the story I just related about the University of Washington, this guy who, again, tried to drive his car into the crowd to kill people and then presumably was going to engage in some sort of mass shooting given the weapon that he had, then decided to make a beeline for the police line in the East Precinct, where he then jumped over the barrier, a barrier that, by the way, people just the night before had been tear gassed for shaking.
Yeah.
He leaped over it while carrying a gun and ran up to the cops, who just sat there casually and then gave them a thumbs up, at which point the police kind of, grabbed him by the shoulder and took him around the corner, and that's the last that anybody saw of him.
Yeah. Now, this is really amazing. When I saw this...
Truly astonishing you've been down there to see this happen.
Oh, my God. There's really good video of it from multiple angles, and, maybe you've probably seen it.
Yeah.
White man jumps through the front line of protesters, running at the cops. He's already, if you'd think if this was anybody, they'd be fucking wailing on him.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think if this was a black man, thank God, probably none of those cops actually have their guns on them.
Yeah.
Or they'd be shooting him. You'd think, as he was saying, I had to shoot a guy, they might get real spooked and start looking at the giant, bulge in his,
about
his hoodie pocket.
The literally set up for mass shooting gun that he brought with him.
Yeah.
That might be concerned about. Yeah.
That he's got in his hoodie pocket there. He's like, I had to shoot a guy. Now, what I saw in that video, and I still think this is the case, what they saw instinctually, and this is why people die. Because when they see a black man they perceive as a threat, they shoot them. When they see instantly, they clock that their duty is to enforce a racialized economic political system that, and it's to kill black people they have decided to perceive as a threat. If they see a protester of anything, but certainly of them, protesting them, someone they clock as that coming at them, they're going to, on a hair trigger, a fucking umbrella waved in their face, they're going to mace and beat you.
Yeah.
But this guy manages to pop through those protesters, fucking bum rushing them, basically, muttering some fucking gibberish. But he is from the video taken like 4 stories up from the top of the Strangers building. You can clock him as he gets out of the car as a white dickhead. Chud.
Yeah.
Fucking dickhead chud. White supremacist looking asshole. And he just has he's got the walk, he's got the look, he's got the way he wears his ball cap. That is how they clocked him coming out of that crowd. And so even when he said, I had to shoot a guy, and was probably saying, I've got a gun.
Yeah.
They were like, they kind of like look at each other like, what do we do here? Do we need to, oh, you've got a gun? They kind of then they kind of start crying and they're like, oh, okay. Oh shit, you have a gun. Oh, fuck. All right, put your arms behind your back. And then they don't all jump on him to beat the shit out of him like they would, say,
anyone else.
Any black person with a gun. And I think any protester with a gun. They all close ranks to shield him from the protesters and spirit him away into the East Precinct, where we know he wasn't even booked for like several hours. So I assume he was hanging out in the break room having beers.
And interestingly, I mean, he was given, $150,000 bail, which was, below what the DA asked for or whatever during arraignment. The guy, by the way, who videotaped the police pepper spraying a girl and then wound up in jail because of it, he's not been offered any bail. Interesting.
Incredible.
Bail denied. So, point being, all this was all very fishy immediately. So, immediately people were like, he's a cop, right?
Well, okay, now hold on. I was like, what I said was, and I said this on Twitter, I was like, I bet this guy's a cop, but not SPD. He's probably suburban.
Like a Bellevue cop.
He's like a Bellevue or like an Auburn cop. Because I was like, they did not recognize him. What was happening here was not that they recognized him. I still think that's true. I don't think they recognized him personally. I think they clocked him as White Chud. So I was like, he's probably a cop, but not SPD. He's a suburban cop who came in to like rescue them or something. Yeah. You know?
So,
but Brian, God damn it. You just know these people too well. He said,
I put my money on
cop or cop adjacent.
Yeah.
And that is on the record, and God damn it.
So, color me surprised to find out that maybe they did recognize him.
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either. But his brother works at the goddamn East Precinct as a cop at the East Precinct, right? So, again,
Brother of cop. God damn it.
And so, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing, right, and this is just a very stark example of something that happens all the time, is we're seeing the nature of police violence is being inherently political, right?
Yeah.
It's not just racist, but it's racist in political ways, right? Like, we can map shootings. So when you map shootings based off of the, median income of the area, what you find is all police shootings happen in one location, which is in low-income areas, right?
Yeah.
That if you are black and live in a wealthy neighborhood, the police will not enter your house and murder you, but they will if you live in a poor neighborhood, right? These are the kind of things that we're starting to see here as we break down police shootings, right? That the police understand their political role in society, right? They understand that racism is tied to the sort of income inequality that exists in this country.
They understand it instinctually anyway.
They don't understand it. They don't understand it like you're going to
I was going to say they don't understand it intellectually, but they don't understand anything intellectually.
They
know when they're hungry, and they get who they're supposed to fuck with.
Yeah, they don't understand it like, say, Keeanga Yamada Taylor understands it, right?
Yeah.
But they do understand it, right? They understand it in the way that every American kind of understands it instinctually, right?
Yes.
Which is why the police know that they can brutalize, just disrespect and, humiliate and even murder homeless people with impunity, but they would never do that to somebody in Laurelhurst, right? Like, so they understand the sort of hierarchy of humanity that we've created, the lawful hierarchy of humanity that the United States has created, right?
And they enforce that hierarchy.
Yeah, and they enforce it. And they also understand the idea that there's political allies in enforcing this hierarchy. The old joke used to be cops and Klan hand in hand, but, that's obviously bigger than just that, right? So guys like the shooter, the guy who shot up the Emmanuel AME Church, right, who they took out for dinner, after arresting.
To the Burger King drive-thru, right?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of shit, it's real. It's very real,
This man shot a guy.
Yeah, shot a guy and then ran at the police.
And he's offered bail.
To be fair, and in the moment, you can say, well, the police didn't know he shot a guy, except for the fact that apparently he was yelling, I just shot a guy.
They had to have, I mean, honestly.
Maybe they hadn't heard on the radio
shooting, it would have been hard to know.
But the thing is, he was apparently yelling, I just shot a guy.
Yeah, you can hear that on the tape very clearly from one of the angles. The angle from the south side of the street.
Let's just juxtapose this with something that happened later that night, which is the police again decide, apparently under Carmen Best's orders, to riot through the hill again, right, and attack the crowd. In the midst of attacking the crowd, they see a woman standing in the crowd who's apparently, like in the video, looks to be kneeling down a little bit, right? And they shoot her directly in the chest with one of the flashbangs that they fire out of their grenade launchers. So just aim at her, they're 20 feet away, aiming directly at her and shoot her directly in the chest. She immediately falls backwards, right? And medics go to try and grab her. As they're trying to grab her, police fire more flashbangs at the medics to try and keep them away. The medics are able to carry her back to a tent that's been there this entire time. All the medics have said the police know where the tent is. They know what the tent is. They've been by it, all that kind of stuff. And they're trying to treat this woman, who, by the way, is fucking dying. Her pulse has completely stopped, and they're trying to revive her, right? Bring her back to life. Police have literally fucking killed her, right?
She was fucking dead.
Yeah, apparently multiple times they had to bring her back to life, right? The entire time this is happening, police are firing tear gas into the tent, firing flashbangs. Specifically, I mean, again, this is not an accident. They weren't firing into just randomly into a crowd. They were aiming at the tent that they saw them take that woman into and firing into that tent. It
is for those officers that we need Soviet-style denazification.
Exactly.
Because if you're going to defund SPD and not have a wave of organized criminality or actual death squads roaming the greater Seattle area of ex-cops who are protected from the law by the current Seattle PD and other police departments because they're ex-cops. The way to avoid that is to try and execute those cops, the ones who did that.
Yeah.
Which, probably a good number are guilty of stuff like that.
Yeah, and apparently, again, under the direct orders of the police chiefs, let's not leave her out.
Yeah.
So
Command level again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Command level doesn't get through that system.
Probably time for people to go research how the Soviet Union dealt with their Nazi war criminals.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the thing is that it was just in one day, in the space of hours, a stark juxtaposition of how two people are treated completely differently, right? One guy with a gun's already tried to murder people, already shot someone, stopped through, not by police, but through heroic efforts of people in the crowd, runs to the police saying, I've shot somebody, jumps over the barricades, charges the police, saying, I shot somebody, and they basically high-five him. A woman is kneeling in the street, not even holding a sign or anything, 20 feet from the cops, and they fire a fucking flashbang grenade directly into her chest, right? Because for them, it's fun. They're having fun, right? It's good times, right? Then when they see her fall over and they see medics grab her, that's when they say, you know, it'd be really fun. Let's fire flashbangs into the medics tent. Let's fire, tear gas into the medics tent, right? Essentially doing everything they can to kill this woman. And again, if not for just absolutely heroic efforts on the ground for people there, for the second time that day, police were thwarted from murdering somebody. Twice.
Yeah.
Within hours, right?
There should be statues on that block of all of those people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a truly astonishing display of what is not just a police department out of control, but a police department that's operating as a force of political terrorism.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that being said, and that all being very depressing, something happened today that lifted a lot of spirits, I think.
Fuck yeah.
Which is a moving truck backed up to the East Precinct.
Well, first this morning, they were building a fucking wall, which I seriously...
That is funny. I can't believe I totally forgot about this.
Brian can testify to this. I stumbled upon this after waking up this morning on Twitter, and I just couldn't stop laughing. And then I'd stop and I'd look at other things for a minute, and then I'd just start laughing again. And just they were building a chain link fence, bolting it. They drilled into the ground. Basically, they hired a fence company to come and do this. And from what we've been able to piece together from people on Twitter is someone told SDOT. SDOT called the fence company and was like, do you have a permit for this? Because we can't find that permit. What the fuck's going on? You're drilling into our street and building a what across our what? And the fence company, who was probably just called up by SPD and assumed, well, SPD's asked for it, must be legit. This is one of the major fence companies in Seattle. They do all the construction fences. They're the main people they need permits from to do every single thing they do. Told them, what the fuck are you doing? And that's what we know from people talking to us. I'm guessing then what happened next was the people actually installing it got a call from corporate, and which was like, get every single piece of that fence out of that street and get away from there as fast as you can. Clear that fucking street and leave immediately. Take anything that belongs to us, anything with our name on it. Just run away. And then we're probably just apologizing profusely to the Department of Transportation. So the cops tried on their own to build a wall on all the streets around the East Precinct. The fucking psychos, which absolutely clown ass move. Literally just all you're doing. This is a protracted people's war.
Also,
the longer you fight it, the more you fucking lose, you asshole.
But also,
you're reinforcing
fencing themselves in.
Fencing themselves in to defend a castle, right? Because they're fucking cosplaying. Their murder is cosplay, right? To them, they're just having fun. I don't know. They're insane. Dumbest fucking thing. All you're doing is reinforcing a protester front line that you then can't. Think about it. They wouldn't be able to charge after or fuck with the protesters. They wouldn't be able to mace them because the first thing that would have happened was protesters would have fucking tarped and fucking boarded the whole thing up, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they could have stood there and partied on one side of the fence. And who cares if they were taunting them by moving it up the block, moving the line up the block, and eventually got them to fucking gas them. But So what? If there's we can't move past this chain link fence until we really want to by just cutting it.
But even better,
don't.
The police have built their own little prison. Good.
Yeah, they're stuck in there.
Yeah. We'll board up the side of the fence, right, so they can't even look out of it, and then they can just sit in there. I mean, just
fucking hilarious,
comically stupid move, and I'm actually kind of sad that the fence company picked it all out and left.
Yeah, and so obviously plans changed, and we've also heard from some people that Durkin was pushing this since the beginning of the weekend.
Yeah.
She wanted this to happen on Friday, but that's speculation. I don't know. There are indications of that. So again, there is a war going on in City Hall between Durkin and the police too. But eventually, they packed up today. They got the National Guard to be their fire line carrying their shit out to their moving trucks.
Which in the fucking National Guard.
Losers. Don't dude. It's one thing to stand there and stand behind the cops to make the cops feel tough, like you've got their back. And then sort of mosey out behind them when they gas and beat people. That's bad enough. But to fucking carry their shit out as they strategically retreat, quote
just
unquote.
To be their fucking pack animal. I mean, just so fucking hilarious.
Losers. Oh my God. So they...
Yeah, if you're in the National Guard and still reporting for this shit, you're a fucking loser.
Yeah, seriously.
And also,
fuck you, Jay Inslee, for letting them back up these fucking...
Yeah, no shit.
Murderous cops.
Again, Democrats worse than useless. But yeah, so the thing is if you happen to be related to or know any of these National Guard guys too, you should just mock them endlessly about being SPD's pack animal, basically being their little dog. Ask him if SPD gave him new dog tags with cute names on it, to call them, because that's all they are, man. I mean, just pathetic. If you had an ounce of self-respect, who gives a shit whether you agree with the protest or not? If you had an ounce of self-respect, you would be showing up to this shit.
Yeah.
Just fucking embarrassing.
Unfucking believable.
The cops volunteer for this shit because they love it.
Yeah.
You joined the National Guard because you like to go camping and need a little extra money every month. Jesus Christ, what a fucking dork. How fucking stupid do you have to be to actually show up for this shit?
Seriously, Inslee should be getting more shit right now for not having pulled them out by now, just watching this over and over again. All they're doing is standing behind the cops as the cops just brutalize peaceful protesters. But anyway, so... Okay, they left now, and they are encamped around the neighborhood in massive numbers. Now, we've been offline for the last 2 hours recording this podcast. Yeah. We don't know. Last that we saw, the protest was happening instead of on 11th and Pine, was happening right there on 12th in front of the East Precinct.
Yeah.
Very peaceful and very
just
cool.
To be clear,
and
they moved out of the East Precinct. They literally emptied it. They took all the computers out. They took all the guns out. They took apparently all the personal effects out, and they boarded it up and left. And I guess they think that it kind of like when NYPD went on strike to show everybody, and then everybody was like, "This is great," and then they had to rush back to work because it was too embarrassing. Similarly, I think there's two possible, ideas behind what they were doing. One being, we'll board it all up and leave, and that'll show them. They'll feel sad for us now that we're gone, and whatever. Of course, people immediately start throwing a party right by the precinct and talking about how maybe we should turn it into a library, a community center, all this shit, right? Having grand plans of all the great things we could do with this building, newly acquired, right? The other theory of what they might have been up to, I'll leave to. What do you think?
The word honeypot was thrown around, a trap.
Yeah.
I mean, they were hot and bothered all over Twitter, along with the fire department, about credible threats of arson against the thing. Mm-hmm. Basically, they want people to burn it down.
Let's get back to that for a second, because they were saying credible. The FBI has given us credible threats of arson, and for all of our listeners who I assume are all 15 years old, there was this thing called the War on Terror. You might have heard of it, but yeah, in 2001, if you were of an old enough age to remember, you'll remember that you got to spend a full decade of hearing about credible threats that the FBI was giving and the CIA was giving. And how many of those threats ever came true? Not a goddamn one, because credible threat from the FBI is how you know you're about to hear a lie. All right? Somebody says the FBI has given us a credible threat. What you should hear is, here's a lie I'm about to tell you. But anyways, go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like they want people to burn it down.
Yeah.
So they can rush in. Like as not, no, that's not going to happen. That's the money I would put down. That's not going to happen. That
I mean, it'd be cool as hell if it did, but let's be serious.
It'd be cool to burn down. The idea of burning down a police precinct is very cool. This is a little different from the one in Minneapolis was basically like a McDonald's franchise. Like it was just its own little shitty building. This is on a dense city block where people live.
All their stuff was in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
they had to
take all this stuff out.
They ran in a pinch. That was like the fall of Saigon. This this is clearly a calculated strategic retreat. So they think, and so not that cool.
You don't burn the building down because they gave it to you. Use it.
Yeah. And exactly. I would say, I would say if I was giving people advice tonight, and people could, do what they do, but I would say don't even go in it tonight. Let wave it in their faces that nothing goes down tonight, and like as not, they'll come rolling in anyway. Who the fuck knows? Sure. Or they'll try and burn it down themselves. I wouldn't put it past them. They're probably so convinced that half the crowd is Antifa and they're going to torch the place that they didn't plant incendiary bombs in there already. But yeah, who the fuck knows, dude? But yeah, I would just let them eat your shit for tonight, and then whatever, maybe it'll be occupied and turned into something good in the future. But I think it's important SPD is never ever let back into that building.
Oh yeah. And the thing is SPD again made another comical mistake, which is they've shown they can leave.
Yeah.
And you know what, a lot of other precincts around, they don't all got to be full.
Nope.
Maybe none of them do.
Nope.
So as far as I'm concerned, an enormous victory, a real sign of where we can go from here. And I think, too, the big thing to highlight is just this is because people are on the ground fighting, right? Like, none of your elected officials got this done. None of, certainly not Jay Inslee, certainly not fucking Mayor Durkin, certainly any of these idiots got this done. Nobody in the National Democratic Party got this done. None of the hashtag resistance got this done. None of these idiots got this done. People on the ground got this done, all right? That's the lesson of the day, right? Is, direct action, fighting in the streets, that gets the goods, right? There's a reason why all these Democrats are on Twitter and social media impotently telling you, look, guys, protesting's great, but remember to get out and vote. It's because voting doesn't do shit. This does, all right? They want you out of the streets as fast as possible because you're winning, all right?
Yeah.
I went on so many, Black Lives Matter, marches in 2014, 15, 16, et cetera, right? Well, we went by East Precinct, and for whatever reason, the police have a fucking real hard on about that precinct, which really makes you wonder what they've been doing in it. But,
what are they hiding?
Yeah, exactly. Because that was always the one that they were most militant about whenever you go by it.
And then they made sure to clear everything out.
Yeah, interestingly.
Because the night before, they were getting pushed up the block, and even when they attacked twice, people still came back at them.
Yeah.
And I think they were getting worried and then they were, so much so they were going to put up a wall, right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, fuck, we can't lose this without moving out first.
They comically had a shredder truck there, too, to shred
shredded
paper.
a bunch of documents.
Interesting.
What was going on in there?
Yeah. So, just a reminder that LAPD had a red squad that operated for 80 years, including in foreign countries, as did NYPD.
Chicago PD had a torture squad.
Chicago PD ran a literal torture chamber where they invented their own torture machines and stuff like that. Really one of the most famous cases of, a community actually getting supposed reforms from a police department all the way. One, they got reparations for it, but they also got that now Chicago public schools have to teach it in their curriculum, that Chicago PD ran a torture chamber that tortured the black community all the way into the 1990s, which enormous victory, actually. That's a bigger victory
huge.
Than because now you're training people to fucking watch that shit. But even with all that, in 2000, I think it was 10, it was revealed, The Intercept revealed that Chicago PD was still running an off-site black site that was off the books, where people would just vanish for days at a time. And boy, did those people have stories about what happened in that site. So, who knows what happens in the East Precinct? All we know is that they've always had a big hard-on about not letting anybody see it. And they've always been a defend it to the death kind of. Even in Durkin's press conference, they really took a strange tone about the East Precinct and how they were going to defend it. After they evacuated it, Chief Best said over and over again, yeah, we're leaving the East Precinct, we're abandoning it, we're going to defend it, we're not letting the protesters burn it down or whatever, right? So, They've always had a
which
weird
is it?
tone about it. Yeah, so I don't know what goes on in that precinct. All I know is it's ours now, and we shouldn't leave it unless forced to.
Yeah.
The city, the building belongs to us now. But anyways, the point being, that's what people in the street did, right? Don't let any politician take that shit away from you. You're winning when you stay in the streets. All right, that's the message.
That is
right?
the message. This moment is like nothing we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's being led by radical activists of color who have got a playbook that is fucking working, and the key component of that playbook is action in the streets.
Yeah.
And in numbers. So every night.
Yeah. Every demand you are hearing has been made by people forever, right? Cops out of schools, defund the police, all this kind of stuff. All these demands have been made. The reason why you're hearing about them now is because they actually have a political force behind them. Before, you were just a lone kook saying it into the wilderness. Now people are in the streets, and now it has power, right? And again, this is the goddamn lesson. All right.
Yeah.
Defund SPD. The leadership's doing a good job, right, in demanding the defunding of SPD.
Yes, it
That's
is very good.
It's very good. What is happening now is good. Don't be a fucking dork online trying to pretend like you're the fucking king of the leftists or whatever.
Yeah,
it's good. Get in the street instead of.
I peeped at my Twitter, and people are hassling Shama down at the East Precinct now for saying defund them by 50% because it's not 100%. And she's trying to explain this is a good strategy.
But-
and she's fucking right. Okay.
And also, the thing is, what we're seeing, because I guarantee you, 5 or 6 years ago, you wouldn't have had that many people yelling that.
Yeah. No, it's
Shama
good.
Sawant.
Look,
so what's happening is
it's good.
those people in the street are getting radicalized
Yes.
too. So
No, it's
now
very
even
good.
those demands are going to sound like not enough for them.
Perfect.
So even if we get that, people are still going to be hungry and going to want more. And that's
Exactly.
what we want.
That is perfect. Yes. If defunding SPD by 50% feels like a failure to most of the city, perfect.
Good.
Stay in the
Demand more.
streets. Never give up the East Precinct. Stand together in solidarity. We're right there with you.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Let's end it.
See you out on the streets.